In Scotland, problem solving has been a formal part of the 5 to 14 maths curriculum since 1991. In this programme, a problem-solving session at Nethermill Primary School near Dumfries is reviewed by the teacher, Mark Valentine, Isabel Murphy, an education officer and former head teacher, and Professor Lindsay Logan, who led the team which drew up the guidelines in the maths curriculum for teaching problem-solving.
The thing that struck me about this activity that we've been looking at was the level of difficulty, Mark, of the task that the children were set, which struck me as something that they would normally be expecting to be doing in the first or second year of secondary school. Yeah. Having said that, they handled it remarkably well.
Yeah, I mean, the problem itself is actually taken from, is recommended as a secondary school problem, but I mean, it's all about what's next and the next step for the kids, really. Some of our recent previous work had been algebra based, and we're moving on to a block of shape work and so on, and also involving geometry, so that it seemed logical to try and combine the needs of the people within the group with taking them on that little bit further as regards in their work with angles and interior and exterior angles.
It was good to see the children making use of their prior learning of calling up facts that they'd previously been taught to enable them to work together to solve the problem.
That's not right. No. Because it has to add up 180. It's a regular triangle, so the inside one's always got to be 60, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's
it was a good problem in the sense that it gave the children an opportunity to work on a practical level. They were doing hands-on tasks. They were carrying out measurement. It involved algebra as well as problem solving. It forced them all to listen to each other, to discuss. So it turned out to be a good choice of problem in the event. And it wasn't too difficult for them. It was a good challenge.
I think that's one of the hardest parts about setting a problem, though. The teacher's always got to take a degree of risk, if you like, in setting a problem, and that you want the problem to be challenging without being too difficult. So there's always there can be a thin dividing line, if you like, between the two. But I think the good aspect about the group situation is that it helps take the fear out of the initial stages of the problem. And I think if you can make it practical, there is, in some respects, there's a more obvious start for the children. There's a way for them to become involved quickly.
The other thing that struck me was the fact that you had a group of 4 who seemed to gel very, very well as a group. I mean, they all contributed.
That was the first time that those 4 children had worked together on a problem. In fact, that was probably one of the more pleasing aspects of it for myself, because, again, there's always that degree of uncertainty about how well children will work together. And I felt that, in general terms, they listened and communicated pretty well together.
It was obvious, watching it, that the 2 children in particular were stronger in the group than others, but interestingly enough, they all cooperated very well and nobody dominated the group.
Do you always do problem solving with small groups working together, or are there occasions when the children might want to say, look, I would like to try and do this myself first, let me get on with it? Does that happen?
To be quite honest, probably if I had taken certain children from that group, if I'd said to them, you can do it on your own or you can do it as a group, some of those would have chosen to do it on their own initially. If children work individually as problem solvers, then that's a first-class skill, obviously. But they're missing out on a whole other range of experiences that are essential to be a good problem solver. Because in the real world, there's a fair chance that you're going to have to be involved with groups of people at some point in order to solve the problems. So if you're not able to communicate what you feel and accept the opinions of others, then I would suggest that perhaps you're not a great problem solver.
Exactly, right.
It was very important that the children listened to one another, and that was an interesting moment when Scott found the way forward, and he nearly didn't get to say that until you intervened and helped him.
Well, there we've done 3 times 120. Yeah. What if you take
3 times what, Scott? What Scott said was important.
3 times 120 is 360.
Okay. They were all generating ideas. All 4 of them had something to say. And it's quite a mature skill to be able to say, what I've got to say is important, but it can wait 2 seconds. So I think that's why, at that point, it was important to be quite firm and intervene.
With the group, they didn't focus on strategies from the outset. They didn't say, we'll use strategy A, B, or C. They looked at the problem, they decided how they were going to do it. In other words, the strategies were coming out of the problem implicitly rather than explicitly. Is this how you normally deal with strategies, or do you find that you have to teach them explicitly at some stages in the school?
I've tried both. I find, though, that with most things like this, whether it be science, technology, maths, problem solving, that children tend to pick up on the use of these strategies more if they learn them from each other. And I think it's far more useful in my own experience in order to that we work through a problem, that the children work through a problem, and then if we can look back, that's where review is really important, when we can look back at the strategies that we're using. If we can identify them from the process that they've gone through, then they can see the relevance for them. I think it's too easy to get bogged down that you've got to use a strategy that's on this list at the start of a problem. It's a real way to put children off problem solving. And what I want to do is maintain the enthusiasm that they come to the process with.
But they do have a list of strategies, I noticed.
Yeah.
Where did that list come from? Did this accumulate as they went through the school? Did you start off with 1 or 2 strategies and just familiarise them with them as they...
Yeah, it's very much a case of, introducing them through experience. But it's not through any set, in primary 4 we're going to do this one, primary 5 we're going to do this one.
I was interested, Mark, to see when you intervened with the youngsters there to help them solve the problem. How did you judge when to come in?
Personally, I find that one of the most difficult things for a teacher to do, and I think what you've got to try and do is maintain the kids' sense of ownership of the problem. If you come in too quickly, if you come in too often, then it becomes a teacher. It becomes a teacher activity again, a teacher-led activity, and the children sit back. I think you've got to be willing to accept that they're going to make mistakes, they're going to perhaps take longer than you expected them to take. They may surprise you and do it sooner than you would think, but I think you've got to be able to judge to the point. The way I do it, to be quite honest with you, I watch the kids' faces. And if you see the kids' faces beginning to get a little disconsolate, if you see them beginning to get a bit fed up, then that's usually a very simple telltale sign that now would be a good time to give them a little boost, go in there and give them a little clue about what will take them on to the next level.
It made sense if I was trying to 1 out of 20.
Right, I understand why you're stuck. Your information is good, the way you've organised it is also very good. What you should maybe start thinking about is what's the relationship between these and the complete angle, the complete turn.
In retrospect, were you happy with the timing and the level of your intervention?
I would say initially I was. Towards the end, the jury's out a little bit in that one, I would say. I'm not too sure. I think there's a sense of teacher frustration growing at some point in there as well, and I think that's something that teachers have got to try and fight within themselves, because that frustration is also the thing that starts making you take ownership of the problem.
It's what's sometimes known as teacher lust. this overpowering desire to be the fount of all knowledge.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
It was actually good to see the children being stuck, because that's what problem solving's all about, and it generated good discussion there, and it was also good to see the children persevering with the problem.
If you can involve them in something that they feel is enjoyable or relevant to their lives, and if they feel as they can engage with each other, then the perseverance is much more likely to come.
Indeed.
And that's one of the beneficial outcomes of the whole problem-solving programme, that children are learning that many times they will be stuck and they won't know where to go, and that being stuck doesn't automatically mean that you give up or you put your hand up and ask the teacher. The ways of becoming unstuck are what they're learning in problem solving.
Yeah, I think there's a fundamental change from seeing being stuck as a failure to being stuck as the start of a process,
Yeah. When we wrote the guidelines in the first instance and developed problem solving as an integral part of the maths curriculum, we defined various stages in the problem solving process: the starting, doing, and finally the reporting stage, all of which were designed to make children conduct an ongoing kind of evaluation of what they were doing. Are your children conscious of the fact, Mark, that they're going to be asked to report back to each other or to you or to the whole class for problem-solving activities that they've done?
They're conscious about the fact that they're being asked to report back. I still think, though, that that's the area that we need to develop most as regards problem solving. It's possibly the one part of the process at the minute where I don't think the kids quite realise yet that it's an important part of the learning. I think they see it more as something for the teacher.
We started looking for a pattern, and then we made an organised table to see if any of the patterns would fit with all the angles that we've got.
If we're talking about assessments for learning and sharing learning attentions, I think review plays an important part of that. And if they're going to commit these things to memory, to experience, to their learning, then I think it's important that we share with the children how important that reporting process is.
Is this something, Isaac, in your experience, that teachers are encouraging children to think about and reflect on and then describe in one form or another what they did and how they got to their solution?
Absolutely. And I mean, I know Mark's dealing with a composite mixed age group class, but in classes, what I would like to see happening and what we are encouraging is that the problem would be set and several groups would solve that problem by various strategies, and they would feed back the different strategies that they have used. They would talk to the class about how they had solved the problem, and then you open up the discussion to the whole class.
Mark, having had the opportunity to look at the group working and yourself working with them, is there anything that surprised you in either a positive or a negative way?
To be honest, Lindsay, that's one of the things about problem solving. I get surprised by every problem I set. I don't think I've ever been able to predict absolutely accurately what's going to happen in any problem I've ever set the children.
That raises another point, the point about teacher insecurity in problem solving, that in a sense, when you embark on a problem, you're letting go the reins, and you're never quite sure of the direction it's going to take. Have you, as an individual, ever felt a degree of insecurity about this?
Absolutely. I think it takes a great degree of confidence of a teacher to be able to say, look, I'm going to do problem solving. Oh, I don't have the answers here. I don't have the answers. I'm no mathematician. I have no great mathematics background. I have no degrees from university in mathematics or anything. But I think as long as the teacher accepts that it is going to be a genuinely open-ended process from their part as well as the children's part, then the fear for the teacher goes a little as well. And I think getting over that fear is a big issue.
The question is, how do you build teacher confidence?
Well, you have to have a programme, don't you, of staff development. And
I think also,
people like Mark sharing their good practice. Yes.
I think that's it. I think teachers teaching with teachers.
I think, Mark, you deserve congratulations for the work we've seen your youngsters doing.
Total turn divided by number of sides equals exterior.
It's excellent to see and illustrates all the kind of benefits that we were hoping that the problem-solving aspect of the curriculum would bring.
Well, it's nice to have someone else's perspective, so thank you.